in an unprecedented manner, Ghana is proposing and is telling the world that anyone who's found exchanging, saving, or selling patented seeds can get a minimum sentence of 10 years. Now, this is an unprecedented sentence worldwide. I believe that in the US, even where Monsanto operates, this is a 2-year sentence. But here, the state is stepping in to, support the criminalization of farmers. The state is helping to use its apparatus to achieve what civil suits on behalf of private companies should achieve. And so we condemn that criminalization of farmers. We think that the Plant Variety Protection Act is also going against international obligations that Ghana has signed to. For instance, the International Treaty for the Protection of Plant Genetic Resources for Agriculture, the Nagoya Protocol. These are all protocols that enjoin Ghana to protect the rights of smallholder farmers to be able to save, sell, and exchange seeds. So we believe that these are not good precedents to be set in a country that believes in freedom and justice, believes in equal rights of its citizens, and the unnecessary criminalization of a large tract of your population. We're talking of at least almost 50% of the people in Ghana are somehow related to farm work. And if this kind of very rigid 10-year minimum sentence is going to apply, even with us who work in the industry, it's difficult to be able to recognize a pile of GM cowpeas and a pile of conventional cowpeas. So there's a very big gray area, and it's an uncomfortable situation that we find ourselves in. We also think that the Plant Variety Protection Act illegally committed Ghana to enjoin itself to the rules of UPOV when Ghana at that time legally had not acceded to be a member of UPOV. So at the time when the Attorney General was proposing these things to have Ghana join UPOV, Ghana itself had not acceded to UPOV. So there's a certain illegality about the process with which they arrived at this act.
In what way does the act criminalize farmers' seeds management practices? As you mentioned, to some extent, maybe you would like to elaborate more on that.
Well, what they're claiming is that anyone found saving or selling these seeds or exchanging them, these are the patented ones, stands the risk of a minimum 10-year sentence. Now, first of all, the communities that this germplasm was taken from don't benefit anything from these, commercial agendas. So how is it that these very companies who turn around, tweak it genetically, and then claim to have a patent, now are able to come back into the same country where that germplasm was taken and criminalize its communities, its farmers, for saving seeds that were essentially derived from where their work has gone in? We believe that the criminalization of farmers in that sense goes against our commitments in the international agenda, in the international sphere. We've signed treaties that commit us to protect their rights. That even in Ghana, the pro-GM lobby is almost against the labeling of GM foods. Left to them alone, they would want a voluntary labeling regime. But from the words of one of the biggest proponents of the GM lobby in Ghana, Professor Waldo Alassane, who was a former head of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, he is against the labeling of GMOs and feels that it's unnecessary, believes that GMOs are similar or the same as conventional and are just as safe. We hold a contrary view to this and want to make sure that every GMO, which crosses the borders into Ghana is labeled. And for that, we've taken up the Food and Drugs Authority. We've given them our official petition. We believe that Ghana should have a mandatory labeling regime so that Ghana does not end up being a dumping ground for any manufacturer around the world who wants to send goods to Ghana and doesn't want to disclose the contents, what they are, where they came from. That's the right of Ghanaian consumers to know. So we feel that if the pro-GM lobby themselves doesn't want the labeling of GMO, then there's certainly something wrong about this lack of accountability, a lack of a want to have traceability. You know, you are releasing genetically modified foods into a society that have never ever eaten a genetically modified version of that crop. In fact, apart from Nigeria, no human beings on the planet have ever consumed genetically modified cowpea. So we are challenging the kind of risk assessments, the kind of tests that have been done to prove that you can consume this genetically modified cowpea for 1, 2, 3, 4 years and not have any impact on your health. We beg to differ because from the research evidence that has been produced by independent researchers, the Bt toxin in the cowpea when produced by the plant is 10 times more toxic than in the Bacillus thuringiensis, which is produced in the soil as a bacteria. So obviously this change in toxicity is going to have some impact on human health. And we believe that GMOs for that reason must be labeled if they are to be sold in Ghana.
What exactly do you want the government to do?
Well, we believe that, first of all, the government needs to ensure that the rights of farmers, as it has signed up in international treaties like the ITP-GRA, for instance, is followed. That the rights of farmers to be able to sell and save seeds, exchange seeds, is respected. So any legislation that goes against what we've already committed to in the international sphere of nations should be null and void. We think that there needs to be mechanisms that are worked into any Plant Variety Protection Act, which ensure that there is no biopiracy. Currently, in the form where the act is, this would just encourage the loss of Ghana's biodiversity to entities that exist for purely commercial interests. And there's no benefit sharing scheme for the communities that have developed some of these seeds over millennia. We want to see a responsibility to those communities that have developed these varieties for so long. And this act clearly doesn't have that. We believe that the act should be more considerate to the rights of farmers to be able to grow the food that they want. And the large-scale economies of scale, which large producers, who the bill is really made in the interest of, they're waiting for such legislation so that they can move into Ghana and take over the seed market to have a very formal seed sector, which will mean a loss of biodiversity. It will mean a loss of hundreds of varieties of different crops because of what the uniformity of business will do to the agricultural sector.
Thank you very much. The next question is,
it was a very good idea that we went to court because that then becomes an official engagement and people are sometimes forced to hear. You may be a media house who has been compromised and don't usually play stories about GMO and these agricultural policies, but the fact that a court has given an order, if you want to continue to be a credible media house, then you have to cover our story. You have to announce that this is what happened in court. So moving to court was a very legitimate and useful means to get this message across. However, even with the courts, is limited. Like I said, again, we're limited by the speed at which the court process works in this part of the world. Very extremely slow. In fact, at some point, our whole docket even got missing from the courts registry. Luckily, we had our own copies of all our documents since we started. And so we got the court registry to accept them as certified true copies and to distribute our copies again to all parties in the case. So going to court has come with its challenges, but it still remains one of the most legitimate means of engaging the public and the nation on this. There still, however, is a lot of education that needs to be done. Despite the good work that we believe we've done as a small outfit, there's still a lot of people in Ghana who are not aware of what GMOs are. They're not aware of the issues about their rights and access to food. They're not aware about issues of biopiracy and so on. So we're hoping that while we fight the case in court, we will be able to continue to do our advocacy work and hopefully get more listening ears.
Thank you. And do you think you will achieve something?
We think that the case we have is quite straightforward when it comes to issues that we've raised about risk assessments, about the appropriateness of the types of risk assessments performed, questions about the availability of epidemiological studies to verify the safety claims that are being made. These are quite straightforward if they're looked into detail. And so we are hoping that the court will be able to, in its wisdom, pay attention to the materials that we provided in evidence, as well as what our scientists, witnesses have said. We've had the opportunity to have Dr. Latham, Jonathan Latham, who has done about 30 years work on the cowpea, as well as Dr. Ten, who's based in Germany with Test Biotech. They've both testified in court in our favor. And obviously they both don't agree that Ghana should be going down the road of GM with the cowpea, given that it's a staple crop, given the fact that there's not been enough risk assessment on the effects of commercially releasing a genetically modified cowpea on other endemic species in Ghana. There's been no results on the effects on non-target organisms that will end up eating this more toxic cowpea. And so for those reasons, we believe that if the court has an opportunity to apply the law where it works, we believe we've made a good case, and we're actually still in the process.
So I think the last question is about, so is there anything else that you'd like to add to what you just said? Well,
we've always challenged the position of the pro-GM lobby, because we believe, from speaking to farmers, from working with farmers, from visiting fields, and from just having a general overview of the agriculture sector, to know that there are mainly about 4 pillars that affect agriculture in Ghana and, to extension, in Africa in general. Now, these are a lack of roads from the farm gate to the markets. There's a lack of credits. Access to credit to farmers is very bad. Farmers do not get loans. There's a lack of irrigation technology. So most agriculture is still rain-fed, relies on rain. And there's also a lack of post-harvest loss infrastructure, which will ensure that the harvests that are gained can be kept for future use. Now, these 4 pillars, if we don't tackle them, will make that even if you have GM cowpeas will still rot on the farms where they're grown. GM cowpeas are not going to create credit for farmers that grow them. GM cowpeas are not going to create irrigation systems. And GM cowpeas are certainly not going to build warehouses where GM cowpeas can be stored. So Ghana needs to look at the priority areas that need to be tackled, given that we are still a developing nation, given that our populations need us to dynamically change the structures of our economies, their welfare, and their way of life. We need to go for the low-hanging fruits, the things that work. And if you ask me, to genetically modify the cowpea in its home of origin, because you feel that a maruca pest is worrying it. This is not the first time our ancestors have dealt with pests that have worried plants on this planet. There are different agroecological ways of tackling pest infestation. There's intercropping, there's organic pest solutions. So to genetically modify a staple that affects hundreds of millions of indigents across a sub-region is short-sightedness, and rather we should concentrate on the things that will provide access for farmers, like I've said, the roads, so that farmers can trade. And so we've lost sight of these fundamental issues, and so we have these lobbyists who have come in and proposed these changes to our structures, such that we want to adopt genetically modified technology. But we ask ourselves, how many African scientists are involved in the development of these genetically modified organisms? Because in the case of Ghana, and I believe Nigeria, these GMOs were produced by institutes that were abroad. The Commonwealth Institute for Scientific Research in Australia, and then the International Institute for Tropical Plants in Cali, Colombia, produced the other GM varieties. So we're talking about dabbling in affairs that are beyond the immediate needs of Africa, beyond the immediate affordability of Africa. And these projects only go on because they get the funding, which has a direct impact on what they want you to grow, and so on and so forth. So African nations need to start thinking in a more sovereign mode. Policymakers need to start thinking in a more sovereign mode. As we are experiencing the Russia-Ukraine crisis, we are now having to see that fertilizer to grow food in countries cannot come from abroad, that it should not be passing from the port before people grow food to eat. And that unfortunately, we're going to have a crisis on our hands where farmers are going to have to adjust and look at what are the locally available solutions for fertilizing our plants. And I believe that this is where our minds should have been in the first place. Maybe this is a wake-up call, but our policy direction should be looking more at home for food to come from as close a source as possible to those who consume it.
Absolutely. And from what you said, do you have also anything to add on the PVP Act?
Well, we continue to challenge it in the Supreme Court. We believe that UPOV is a very rigid and inflexible regime, that it's merely exists to actually open the doors for companies that will boost the economies of certain countries to come into other smaller countries and dominate the seed market. This, we believe, does not inure to the long-term benefit of Ghana's national security, and the citizens of Ghana will resist such attempts to control their food sources, especially with a staple like the cowpea, which is responsible for so many dishes, so many ceremonies, so many traditional rituals. Food is more than just what we eat. It has symbolism. It's a store of wealth. And we believe that these forms of, these PVPs are insensitive to the realities of the ground, how these cowpeas interact with farmers in their real lives, such that they can now criminalize farmers who end up saving or exchanging or selling them.